Real quick before we jump into the video, just letting you guys know that we have Owl House t-shirts, including Full Metal Alchemist for those of you who like sick anime puns, and Witches Before Wizards for those of you who won't let a man get between you and your sisters. You can wear it if you're a dude though, we don't judge. Just head over to Utip and scoop them up while you can. Link is in the description down below. In the most recent episode of the Owl House, I was absolutely floored when Luce discovered that there was a constellation in the shape of her light spell in the sky. At first, I thought this was where all spells were going to come from, that they were going to be cool symbols made with stars that she could copy onto paper and experiment with, but then we saw the glyph hidden in the snowflakes and it changed everything. Luce should now be able to find new spells everywhere she goes and in everything she does, with new conflicts being resolved by her finding and putting together a new spell on the fly. One question that arises, though, is how common are these glyphs, and why haven't we seen more of them already in previous episodes? Well, as it turns out, we have. This was brought to my attention by one of our viewers, Spartan Warrior, who said that if you look around, you can find some hidden glyphs in the series, or at the very least, one really notable one. The first that Spartan mentioned, of course, is the fireworks from episode 1. While the fireworks are exploding, they constantly repeat this same pattern, a pattern that if Luce can draw on paper or on the ground, may be able to cause explosions, or at least smaller firework-like explosions, decorative but kind of dangerous. At first, I wasn't quite sure if this was a glyph because it seems to lack symmetry. The previous glyphs aren't perfectly symmetrical, of course, such as these two lines on the light spell we see here, but when it came to the fireworks, it just felt like there were a random mess of shapes instead of a specific pattern. This could actually be because the nature of explosions is a bit more random and uneven. Plus, when we get a look at the glyph on its own without all the other explosions and stuff surrounding it, we may find that there is more method to its madness than we can see here. Now, one thing I have seen plastered across all of the comments, all over our videos, and everywhere else on the internet really, is the possibility that the Owl House itself has a glyph in its stained glass window. There is a lot of reasons why this sounds unlikely, like why it wouldn't have randomly activated anytime someone touched it, but there is also a lot of evidence that supports it could be a glyph. We're going to break it down, but first, here's a live action deep cut with a word from our sponsors, Utip. Utip isn't just the place that we're selling our cool new t-shirts, it's actually a platform similar to Patreon that you can use to help support us as a channel. Unlike Patreon, however, you don't need to do a monthly donation. You can do a one-time tip for us, or click on one of the ads that we can collect revenue on. So you can support us without spending a single cent. I'll put a link in the description down below so you can head over and check it out. Now, when it comes to the Owl House window, the design is rather basic, particularly in that it's just a creepy looking eye with some stained glass pieces coming out from it, making it really seem like a stylistic choice, the kind you see with almost every stained glass window. Eyes are also a common visual theme throughout the Boiling Isles, so it's hard to say that this one is different in that it's a spell while the others aren't. A lot of people also think that because it is a stained glass window itself, that it can't also be some ancient and forgotten spell. However, I think that it's been established that this could actually happen. In episode 7, Luce discovers a library, and Amity's older siblings, the twins, take her there at night because they are told that when a magic comet called the Wailing Star passes by, some crazy magical event will happen. This turns out to be all of the books coming to life, but if the Wailing Star is what causes this, then why is it limited to the library? Why aren't all the books all over the Isles coming to life on this night? Well, the answer may be that the library has a special glyph as a stained glass window, just like the Owl House. When the star passes by, the light shines through this window and seems to enchant the books as soon as they are opened. It would seem that the glyph in the stained glass window causes it to happen, and it just harnesses the power of the passing Wailing Star to make it happen. This makes sense as thus far, we have seen that Luce needs some materials to cast a spell outside of what's needed to draw the glyph. When she casts her light spell, it appears to always burn up whatever she drew it on, using it as fuel. Presumably, the light goes out when whatever is being used burns up entirely. So, like with that glyph, these stained glass windows probably need the appropriate items or elements or essences or scenarios to make it work, which is why this spell for the Owl House, whatever it may be, hasn't been cast by accident, at least as far as we know. The window isn't the only possible glyph in the Owl House, though. When Eda first takes Luz home, she lights some candles and we see this mysterious carving light up. This shape doesn't appear to be in a circle, but it was a very poignant moment in the pilot that made me think there might be something enchanted about it, perhaps harkening back to the family history in some way. If it was put in a circle, who knows what it could do, though it's definitely different than the other glyphs we've seen in that it's not just a pleasant arrangement of shapes, but rather a distinct image of some bird or owl-like demon. Eda casts a levitation spell to get Luz and King into the prison back in episode 1. She taps her staff against the ground, and a circle appears with a faint image of a diamond inside of it. It seems far too simplistic to be a full-fledged spell, and I wrote it off as just the outburst of light that came from the spell she made. Earlier in the episode, though, she does a similar levitation spell to her shop's items, and while it is more faint, we can see a diamond appear in that circle as well. Because the animations are different, it gives the impression that the diamonds recurring was a very particular choice. It's still too simple to make an entire levitation spell out of, at least I think it is, but it might be one piece to the puzzle of levitation that Luz could use later with other symbols. Back in episode 7, I found another glyph seemingly hiding inside of Amity's diary. It seems to me that it might actually be because of Luz that she discovered it. After seeing how she cast the light spell at the convention, she might have become more curious about the possibility of glyphs and started doing more research on them herself, or perhaps designing her own to see what might happen. What's weird is that the numbers on the page seem to indicate that this entry is from the month of April, but when the image of Amity starts talking, she talks about seeing Luz again and maybe being too cruel, which does sound like she is referencing their talk at the convention. Another really cool glyph I found that wasn't exactly hidden was an alternate version of Luz's light spell in the body swap episode. In my last video, I theorized that spells could be edited ever so slightly by Luz to produce a similar yet different effect, as when it came to her ice spell, she seemed to add a new piece to it, as you can see here, that caused her to create a block of ice, which is frozen water, as opposed to snowflakes where she found the glyph, which is frozen vapor. Well, in this episode, we see her light spell, while also working together with other small light spells on a board to create a flashing Eda. All have a different setup than the light spell she first learned. This episode was aired out of order in the US, with production codes indicating that it should have been the 15th in the season, so we may actually see an episode where Luz experiments with adjusting her spells with different shapes and such, explaining how she came to the realization that this thing is possible. This isn't a hidden glyph since Luz made it herself, but it's an interesting little detail that a lot of people seem to not notice. Now, there's also a lot of shapes that appear in the backgrounds of episodes that I think some people are mistaking for glyphs, but hopefully I can debunk here. Since we know glyphs can be found in nature, a lot of people are looking at the backgrounds and are noticing circular shapes appearing in wood, and particularly on trees. In this instance, part of the Owl House has some circles, but it looks like pretty basic rings that you'd see if you cut a tree open, indicating the age of the tree just like in real life. In the other instance, where we see the design on the outside of a tree, the design is a bit more intricate, but I don't think these are glyphs either. They have no particular uniqueness to the design and are just a spiral meant to look like the trees have eyes, with the indents in the trees helping with the general shape. Next, we have these symbols that witches sometimes use on themselves with these little patches. We first see them at the convention, when a construction witch uses this patch on a little demon to give her super strength. We see a medical-themed one later on in the Owl House shorts that features an advertisement for Hexside, where Gus's bully is constantly getting hurt, with medical patches seen in later shots. I don't think that these symbols are naturally magical, but rather that they are a labeling system to indicate what these patches have been infused with. I could be wrong though, and these symbols could come into play in some of Luz's glyphs later, but I doubt it. That's all the glyphs I was able to find so far, with a little help from some of you in the comments, so thank you all to everyone who contributed. If you guys find any more, let me know, and maybe after a few more episodes we can make another video breaking them all down. Don't forget to check us out on Utip, maybe buy a t-shirt, and I'll see you next time.